everybody. My name's Tara Lemeries. I'm here with the second part of the 5 ways to deepen your practice. This is, in fact, a yoga practice. I'll be incorporating things from that presentation. The practice itself can stand alone, so even if you haven't watched the presentation, this will still make sense to you. I would encourage you to go back to watch that presentation if you like. There's some good ideas for how you can expand your experience of yoga without having to do fancy or crazy poses. Though I will say fancy and crazy poses are very fun too. So have a good seat for your practice. I've chosen to sit up on some folded blankets. The idea here is that as you can lift your pelvis a little bit higher, your knees can be at the same height as your pelvis or lower, and it will increase your ability to sit with a tall spine. So at the very beginning of that presentation, the first way to deepen your yoga practice is to dive deeper into the texts of Hatha Yoga. The very first group of texts that has inspired yoga practice and where it is today are the Vedas. The Rig Veda is one of these 4 sets of texts, and it's really one of the first mentions of this word yoga. The word yoga in that text is described as the item that connects or yokes together 2 war horses, and is also the tools and the practices that are used to get those horses to do their job. If we're thinking about this, that yoga is a yoke, a join together, the tool and the item itself, that can influence the way that we show up for our yoga practice. What are we connecting to? What are we combining and joining? One of my favorite ways to explore this is to think about yoga as relationship. In fact, one of my teachers, Cindy Lee, talks about this all the time, that there's a joining together, a relationship between seemingly opposing forces, a relationship between where we put our mind and where we put our body. So this is your first inspiration, studying the yoga texts, leaning back into the Vedas and this definition of yoga. The second way to deepen your practice is to incorporate pranayama. Pranayama comes in lots of different forms, but primarily pranayama breaks down into 2 things. First, there is the noticing of the breath, and then there is the technique that shapes or manipulates, expands, or narrows the way that we breathe. So our pranayama practice tonight is very simple. It begins with noticing, and then we'll start to count the breath. This practice is called samavritti. Hey, you'll remember perhaps from that presentation that bonus way to deepen your practice is to learn a bit of Sanskrit. This word sama, it means whole or equally balanced. Vritti is a fluctuation or a vibration. And so when we think about these 2 words together as a practice, samavritti is about whole breathing or equally balanced fluctuations of the breath. We'll do a 5 count in this pranayama practice. That's 5 counts to inhale and 5 counts to exhale. Let's give it a try. Place your hands, you could either turn them upward in your lap, bringing the fingertips of your left hand to the root of your right hand, and then circling your fingers around. This gesture, this mudra, is called the cosmic mudra. I like the way that sounds. Or perhaps you'd like to put your hands down on your thighs to let your elbows hang under your shoulders. This is the mudra, the hand gesture of calm abiding. If you're feeling a little unsettled and you need to ground yourself, the hands turned down is a great option. If you feel like you could use a little upliftment in your energy or your awareness, palms turned up will work nicely, but either one is perfect. Close your eyes. Connect, yoke your attention to your breath. As you notice that you're breathing, you can begin to gather up your mind around the breath, equally balanced, inhale and exhale. I'll count it out for you. You can stay with me for the count, or if you find that this counting is onerous, too long or too short, or just doesn't match with your breath, You could divert and do your own count. Make the inhale and the exhale last for the same amount of time. First, exhale your breath all the way out. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do 3 more on your own. Let go of your counting and feel the impact of that practice. Did it gather up your attention? Did it connect your breath and your awareness together? This connection of attention to breath is foundational to the shamatha meditation. Shamatha is a practice that comes to us from Buddhism. It's at the basis of mindfulness meditation, of which you may have heard or even practiced. Something that's unique about shamatha is that it's often done with eyes open. The word Buddha, it means awake. And so we're practicing steadying our mind while we're awake to the outside world. Keep the tall spine that you've created, but drop your chin in towards your chest. Open your eyes and look out into the space that's just in front of you. Maybe about 3 feet out in front of you on the floor. Careful not to harden your eyes or look at anything specific. And then notice that you're breathing. Place your attention with your breath. Notice when your mind wanders off. And then replace your attention back to your breath. That's it. That's the practice. Simple, but not easy. It's tempting to think that it's the mind's job to stay with the breath, but that's not it. This practice is about noticing, waking up to the moments when your mind has wandered away. When you've been distracted by the sounds of someone doing dishes in your home, or the cars outside on the street, or the fan on the air conditioner. Every time your mind wanders away, you replace your attention back to your breath. We'll sit like this, placing mind and bringing it back again and again for 1 minute. your mind back, if it had been wandering, and close your eyes. Lift your chin. Lengthen your spine if you notice that you've slumped over or slouched a bit. And feel the impact of what's happened so far. Slide your fingertips down to the floor on either side of you. And keep your gaze soft. And blink open your eyes. You wouldn't have to do any asana at all. That could be your entire practice. And that could be a fantastic way for you to deepen your experience of yoga. If you've watched the presentation, you know that the fourth way that I've offered for you to deepen your experience is to dive into the actions, the specific ways of moving the body within the postures as a way to make simple or familiar postures feel more compelling, more interesting, sometimes more challenging, and sometimes more accessible. We're going to do this with a triangle pose today. So come on up to standing. You can move any of your props off to the side. Step your feet out wide, so you're facing the long edge of your yoga mat. We're just gonna jump right into a triangle pose just to see how it feels without really having done very much preparation. Don't push yourself and don't stress about what's gonna happen. We're gonna let this unfold even more as we move through this part of the practice. But with this wide stance, turn your left leg out. I'm gonna mirror you. I assume you're facing your camera here. Turn your left leg out, so you're turning your thigh, your knee, and your foot. Glance back at the right foot and just make sure that the little toe side of your foot is running parallel to the short edge of your yoga mat. Lift your arms into a wide T shape, then hinge at your left hip and lower your left hand down to your ankle or to your shin or to the floor or to whatever you could reach. This is a perfectly fine triangle pose. Maybe you have done this triangle pose 1,000 times. Maybe to the point where it feels kind of boring, and maybe you're finding yourself wanting to do something fancier or more exciting, right? Like you've run your course with triangle pose. Come on back up to the center. Lower your arms. Just do this to the other side so you can be more even. Turn your right leg out, right thigh, knee, and foot. Turn your left foot so it's at least parallel to the short end of your yoga mat. Lift your arms, hinge at your right hip, and lower down into your side bend triangle pose. Feel how this feels. This triangle pose is perfect. It's exactly as it should be. Maybe that means your body's feeling a little cranky. We haven't really done anything to warm up. We were just sitting for a while, so maybe the backs of your legs are giving you some feedback. Maybe some shoulder stuff is happening. But use this pose just to notice. What's your reaction to triangle pose? Okay, come all the way back up to standing. Lower your arms, turn your feet, and step your legs back together. Let's go back to the beginning of where you would normally begin an asana practice and prepare for that pose just a little bit more. Come to all fours, please, into table pose. Connecting breath to the body, remember that's one of the aims or the invitation to consider from the Rig Veda from the beginning of class. Set up here on all fours and then begin to connect your breath to the movement of your body. Inhale to cow pose, that's collarbones forward and sitting bones high. As you exhale, round your spine and push back hips to heels into child's pose. Inhale, table to cow. Exhale, cat to child. Once more, inhale, table to cow. Just notice how the breath moves and propels you in and out of these poses. Exhale, cat pose to child's pose. Come back up to all fours and step your left leg out to the left. Make a kickstand straight out from your hip. You remember in triangle pose, you need to have a wide leg position. So doing this will help to stretch your inner thigh, right? In preparation for that wide stance. Hook up breath and movement again. Inhale to cow pose. And as you spin your sitting bones towards the sky, notice something jazzy down your inner left thigh. Shift your hips back towards your heel and continue to notice the feeling through inner thigh. And then shift your body forward back towards a table pose. Do that again. Exhale, shift your hips back. Inhale, shift forward. Once more, exhale, shift back. Inhale and shift forward. Switch your legs. Step your right leg out to the right, straight out from your hip. Spin your sitting bones towards the sky. Move your collarbones and chest forward. As you come into that cow pose shape with deeper curve through low back, what does your inner right thigh have to say about this? Shift your hips back towards your heel. Then inhale forward. Exhale back. Inhale forward. Once more, shift your hips back as you exhale. Inhale back to the center of your mat. Pull your right knee back in and sit back on your heels. We'll give our legs a break for a second and do something to prepare the arms. If sitting back and kneeling just does not feel nice for your body, cross-legged is just fine. Just a seat is all you need. Lift your arms out to the sides. Look forward, but can you see your entire hand out of your peripheral vision? Flip your palms down and move your hands far enough forward that you can even see your pinky fingers. Now begin to stretch out, fingertips to fingertips. Notice any feeling of stretch or opening across the front of your chest. Especially reach out through your thumbs. What does that feel like on the front of your chest? Reach out through the index finger mounds and finger pads. Reach out through your middle fingers. Even reach out through your pinkies. Something kind of simple, like holding your arms out to the sides and stretching out more actively, can make this arm position feel challenging, hopefully interesting. Or maybe just like you're ready to lower your arms. Lower your arms by your sides. There's some more leg action to prepare here. You'll remember perhaps from the slide if you were looking at the presentation that there's an external rotation that's required from your legs. So come to lie down on your back and we can explore that from reclining. Bend your knees as you come to your back. And then bring your right knee into your chest. No hands involved here. This is just a leg thing. Lift your foot so that your knee is bent at about 90 degrees. And then find the place with your mind where your thigh bone meets into your hip. That's the source of this external work. Rotate your right thigh in your hip so that the inseam of your pant leg comes more visible. It starts to move towards you. Then rotate your leg back to neutral. Notice how this is not the same thing as just dropping your knee out to the side. That's a slightly different action. This is a really specific rotation. Try it again. Rotate thigh bone in hip so that your inseam of your pant leg comes more obvious to you. And then back to neutral. Third time's a charm, I always say. Rotate your thigh bone in your hip and then bring your leg back to neutral. Lower your foot to the floor and switch legs. Bring your left knee into your chest. Lift your foot so that your knee is about 90 degrees and make sure that your foot is still part of the party, that your foot hasn't sort of gone to sleep or gone on holiday. It's your whole leg that's working here. Find with your mind the place where your thigh bone meets into your hip. And then rotate your thigh bone, your femur, in your hip socket. Rotate it back to the center. Feel how that's different from just opening your knee out to the side, right? Those are two separate actions. Focus here just on the rotation. Try that again. Rotate thigh bone and hip. And then bring your leg back to neutral. Once more, rotate your thigh bone in your hip. External rotation. And then back to neutral. Lower your foot down to the floor. Okay, roll over to your side and come back around into an all fours position. Step your right leg forward towards the front of the mat. Walk your hands up to your front thigh for a second so you're a little more upright. If you remember from the slide, the next thing I wanted us to explore is this kind of push and pull thing that happens in the leg. So it's outer hip pulling back while inner edge of the foot presses down. You can use your hand to help with this one. Take your right hand, I just want to turn so you can see what's happening here. Take your hand and slide your thumb into your hip crease. So you've got this kind of horseshoe shape, and that hand position can help you push back at your outer hip. So try that here in your lunging shape. Use your thumb and start to pull back on your outer right hip. Now, if you did that to its fullest extension, the inner edge of your foot would kind of pop up away from the floor. But here's that union of opposites, right? The union and the yoking that we keep talking about. As you pull your outer hip back, push into the inside edge of your front foot. And just feel how that feels. Now, this work gets extra jazzy when we put the leg, the knee, in extension, essentially stretching the hamstring. So lower your hands to the floor. Feel free to use your blocks. You could slide the blocks under your hands, or you could just touch the floor. You've got 3 very convenient sides. You could pick the just right height. But straighten your right leg. Flex your foot so you're resting on your heel. Sometimes this is called the runner's stretch. It's half of Hanumanasana. Hanumanasana is the splits. Take your right hand, just like you did before. Tuck your thumb into your outer hip. As you're pulling back on your outer right hip, push into the big toe mound of your right foot. Keep pressing so much into your foot that you start to lower the sole of your foot towards the floor, but do that without letting your outer hip pop forward. I used to have a teacher who would say, "That'll keep you working." It will, right? Do you feel that? Just a simple thing like straightening your knee from a lunge with these actions becomes really compelling. Keep pulling your outer hip back as you push the inner edge of your foot to the floor. Bonus points when you start to lengthen your spine, which can turn up the heat in the stretch of the back of your leg. Okay, relax the pull back with your hand. Bend your knee back down. And then switch the position of your legs. Step your left leg forward. Crawl your hands up to your front thigh. Get familiar with this action first in a bent knee. Tuck your thumb in that little horseshoe shape into your outer left hip, and then use your hand to pull your hip back. So as you're pulling your hip back, push into the inner edge of your left foot. This is the relationship we're talking about, right? The unifying or the yoking of seemingly opposing things. That your outer hip pulls back, but your inner foot presses down. Okay, lower your hands to the floor. Feel free to grab your blocks. Straighten your leg. Flex your foot. It might even be that right here you're already feeling some pretty jazzy stretch in the back of your leg. Add this thing. Thumb to your hip. Pull back on your outer left hip. And as you pull back there, press into the inner edge of your foot. Keep pressing, and maybe you'll be able to press so much that the inner edge of your foot gets all the way down to the floor. Don't worry if it doesn't. There's a whole lot of jazzy stuff happening, even when your foot still hovers like mine does. Keep this work. Pull back on your left outer hip. Press down through your inner left foot. And then a little jazz comes when you lengthen your spine. The back of your leg can light up even more. If someone were just watching this, right, without listening to the sound, it might look like not a lot is happening, right? This is not a fancy pose, but there's a lot of energy that comes around these actions. Okay, bend your left knee back down. Step your knee back to all fours into table pose. Tuck your toes. Lift your knees and hips up and back to downward facing dog. Use the press with your hands down and forward to help you lift your sitting bones up and back. Aim your tailbone towards where the wall and ceiling meet behind you. Keep that lift with your hips and drive your inner heels down towards the floor. in the direction of. Totally okay if your feet don't make it down. Now walk your hands towards your feet. Walking towards the back of your mat puts a different load on your hamstrings. It really requires them to be both strong and long. That's different than when you step forward or jump forward to the front of the mat. Relax your neck, your head, and your spine. Uttanasana, a forward fold. Step your feet out just a little bit wider than your hips. Add a bend to your knees, just a smidge, and then catch hold of your elbows. Let this pose be passive. Something that also feels really compelling to me in this exploration of actions is being able to determine when a passive posture could be useful to us and when we have to engage in those specific ways, like what we were just doing in the lunge. Give yourself just one breath here. Then release your hands to the floor. Bend your knees a lot. Bring your hands to your hips. Move your outer hips back just like you were doing. Press into the inner edges of your feet. Lengthen your spine and come all the way up to standing. You want to try that triangle pose again? Turn towards the long edge of your yoga mat. Step your feet out wide. Turn your right leg out. Remember that external rotation? Thigh bone rotates in hip, knee and hip follow. Line up so that your back foot is parallel to the short end of your mat. Now, if you've had this experience where your legs are feeling super tight, inner thighs and hamstrings just really are binding you up this evening or today whenever you're watching this video, if you rotate the back leg a little more internally, it'll give you some more ease for your hamstring and your inner thigh. You can try it and see if it helps you. Even though your feet are wide, pull your feet in towards one another, like you're trying to buckle up the mat between your feet. And just that can create a whole new exciting sensation in your legs. Lift your arms out to your sides. Take that wide and expansive shape with your arms. When you're facing straight forward, can you see both hands out of your peripheral vision? The tendency is for this back arm to start to drift way back, but just make sure you can see it from here and find that big expansive stretch. Then look towards your right hand. Hinge over into your right hip and lower your right hand to triangle pose. Hey, did you lose that squeeze between your feet? I did. Squeeze your legs in. Then remember that thumb and hip crease. Pull back on your right hip, but at the same time, press into the inner edge of your right foot. Sometimes looking down can just remind you, can look and see, is that pressing down? Go back to expanding across the front of your chest. Reach out through the crown of your head. Last but not least, turn your ribs. Move your bottom ribs forward. There's a little twist happening there. This triangle pose feels different, right? Trikonasana has a whole new experience when we dive into those really specific actions. Come all the way back up to standing. Lower your arms and switch the position of your legs. Remember the turnout comes from your hip. Rotate your thigh bone in your hip so left leg turns out, hip, knee, and foot. Adjust the right leg's position, at least parallel to short end of mat, or if you need a little extra support for inner thighs or hamstrings, turn the back leg in a little bit more. Lift your arms to shoulder height. Expand out through your arms and your fingertips. Then hinge over at your left hip and lower your hand to your shin or to your ankle or to a block. Gather up your legs, squeeze them in like you're trying to buckle the mat between your feet. Pull back on your outer left hip. Look down and confirm with your eyes that you're pressing into the inner edge of your left foot. Take these very clear actions and begin to expand through your arms, out through the crown of your head. Last but not least, turn your rib cage. Left side of the ribs moves forward as you expand into Trikonasana, into your triangle pose. Come all the way back up to standing. Lower your arms. Turn both feet parallel to the short ends of your mat. Make your groin hollow. Do that by dropping your pubic bone towards the floor and fold over into a wide-legged forward fold. Bring your fingers down wherever they land. Drop your head. Have another one of those more passive moments in the forward bend. Relax your neck and breathe into your back. Lift your head as you lengthen your spine. Walk your hands forward and then step your legs back in. You can go heel, toe, or step, step. Come down into kneeling. Swing your legs around and come to lie down on your back. Bend your knees. Rest your hands on your belly. Open your feet a little wider and tent your knees. Rest your legs against one another. Feel the impact of what just happened. What happened in your body? But notice if your mind feels different. Have you brought a kind of intellectual inquiry to your practice that you might not have experienced before? You know, Shavasana is the place where we let go of all of that. The seeking of the mind, the efforting of the body. Straighten your legs out along the floor. Release your arms out by your sides. Relax your legs. Relax your arms. Receive your breath. And rest your body. Shavasana. attention back. Deepen your breath. Bend your knees. Roll over to your side. Push yourself up into a seated position. Let your head be the last thing to arrive as you come back into your seat. Join your palms together in front of your heart. Deepening our practice of yoga can happen in so many ways. Any of these ways that I've outlined for you this evening. Feel what this feels like to have done this exploration. Joining our voices and energy into the sound of Om is one of many ways that we can honor the wisdom and the ritual and the traditions of yoga. Deepening our practice is ultimately about that. How do we honor the source, the texts, and the culture from which this practice comes? How do we explore what it means to participate in the world as a yogi, to position our bodies in space, to meditate, to breathe? I'd love for you to add your voice to mine for this Om. It's a way of honoring the wisdom and the ritual and the traditions of the practice. Please exhale your breath all the way out. Inhale deeply. Release your hands into your lap. Keep your gaze soft as you blink open your eyes. If you're ready to continue to deepen your practice of yoga, please consider joining me for the Hatha Yoga Teacher Training at Lighthouse Yoga Center. We will explore all of these ways of deepening your yoga practice and so much more. If you have questions, please reach out to us. Rebecca, our studio owner, and I are very happy to answer any of your questions. I look forward to seeing you, maybe in the training, or maybe just on the mat at another time. Be well, everyone.